In our series on the literary categories of the ancient Near East, this section focuses on the term wisdom literature. Introduction. The term suggests that this genre of literature deals with or promotes what is meant by the term wisdom, which we looked at earlier. Orlin, in his book Life and Thought in the Ancient Near East, provides a definition of this term without going into local specifics. In its broad outlines, wisdom literature is characterized by advice to the recipient in the form of instructions issued by a sage or a high official, including kings, on how one should live in order to experience tranquility and profit. These instructions come not from the type of philosophical formulations that the classical Greeks might have offered, but rather from life experience in which the official or the ordinary person has participated or should otherwise be aware of. The aim is to guide a person, especially a young man, through his youth, maturity, and old age, so that he will be well regarded and can also be considered as fit for attractive positions that a king or other high official might wish to fill. Orlin 2007:119. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines wisdom literature as follows. Wisdom literature flourished throughout the ancient Near East, with Egyptian examples dating back to before the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. It revolved around the professional sages, or wise men, and scribes in the service of the court, and consisted primarily in maxims about the practical, intelligent way to conduct one's life and in speculations about the very worth and meaning of human life. www.britannica.com/topic/biblical-literature/proverbs. But what Britannica describes here is actually biblical wisdom literature with its main categories of practical wisdom and speculative wisdom. And this is where the discussion begins. Why wisdom literature is considered an inappropriate term. Until the beginning of the 20th century, wisdom texts from Egypt and Mesopotamia were still hidden in the desert sand. Biblical wisdom texts, although younger than most of the other texts, on the other hand, had been known for more than 2 millennia, and theological and literary concepts had become established. It was therefore obvious that these concepts were initially used as working terms for comparable texts from the ancient Orient. But after the newly discovered texts had been studied, criticism arose regarding the use of biblical terms. There were various reasons for this. With regard to Mesopotamia, the Italian archaeologist Bucciolotti believed that the texts that can be associated with wisdom are too diverse in literary terms to fit into a single genre, Cohen 2013:12. Theological differences between the Babylonian and biblical texts were also a reason why the use of terms for biblical literature was considered inappropriate, Cohen 2013:8. With regard to Egypt, Egyptologist Miriam Lichthiam prefers the term didactic literature due to the literary differences from biblical wisdom literature, Lichthiam 1996:261. This also fits in with the rather secular character of these texts. The Egyptian term for wisdom is merely used for achievable human skills and competences. There is no place for divine influence. Therefore, there was no knowledge of transgressing his commandments, namely sin. There was no term that equals our notion of sin, and the Egyptian certainly did not think of himself as a sinful being. By sheer repetition and emphasis, the principal virtues and vices stood out. Lichthiam 1996:261. Certain differences in the texts used in these different regions, which were intended to shape the character of future leaders, are easy to explain. These societies are characterized by different cultures, religions, and languages, which is why their educational texts are also based on different hidden curricula. The unstated hidden curriculum follows the needs of a culture. It shapes and encompasses the objectives of the stated curriculum of an educational system. Lingenfelter and Lingenfelter, 2003, Chap. 2. The issue. Why wisdom literature may nevertheless be an appropriate term. Despite these objections, there are still reasons why one can speak of wisdom literature beyond the borders of Israel. Although the other regions possess greater literary diversity in connection with wisdom literature, Weeks sees literary parallels there to every literary form that appears in the Israelite Book of Proverbs. Most of the book consists of instruction or sentence literature, sometimes mixed, and these styles of composition have counterparts within literature from elsewhere in the ancient Near East, including some of the earliest texts from Egypt and Mesopotamia. There the styles are associated with broader genres, which include much material not directly comparable to anything in Proverbs and are integral parts of the respective literary traditions. Weeks 1990-1:332. Weeks sees the possibility that local wisdom texts are part of a cross-border ancient Near East wisdom as the reason for these parallels. Weeks 1990-1:338-339. And, of course, the fact that the regions influence each other to some degree. Weeks 1990-1:97-98. We see such intercultural relationships indicated in 1 Kings 4 verses 20-34, a history book of the Bible, which in this passage reports that King Solomon of Israel gathered with the wise men of all nations, exchanged and accumulated wisdom. As a result, we see North Arabian wisdom of the king of Massa, Proverbs 31 verses 1-9, incorporated into the book of Proverbs, and we see a huge passage there, Prov 22:17-23:11, with parallels to the Egyptian instruction of Amenemhat. In addition to the literary parallels, we also see parallels in content. The ancient Near East has very similar views on how a good life looks like. See Week 1, the wisdom that Proverbs help us to gain. Among the major genres of ancient Near Eastern literature, wisdom literature allows us insight into what was considered to be a good life. Whether in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, or within the Hebraic biblical tradition, there existed a remarkable similarity of experience and outlook that can be observed. Orlin 2007:119. Biblical proverbs and Egyptian instructions also have similar tools to stimulate character growth, character types and anotypes which represent desirable and reprehensible courses of action. They also have similar principal virtues like truthfulness, justice, kindness, generosity, temperance, diligence, and more. Miller 2020:22-23. As example, the heated man versus one with self-control, Egypt. Do not start a quarrel with a hot-mouthed man, nor needle him with words. Pause before an intruder, bend before an attacker, sleep on it before speaking. A storm that bursts like fire and straw, such as the heated man in his hour. A mapped 82-92. Or the fool versus the wise, Israel. It is a fool's pleasure to do wickedness, but wisdom is a man of understanding's pleasure. Proverbs 10 verse 23.